I'm very privileged to announce I'm very privileged to announce our next speaker. Don Herscher is the President and Chief Strategy Officer at ElegantWord, a marketing agency focused on the strategic application of storytelling to combat today's communication challenges. Don is one of the most sought after. I'm a little winded. I was like back there dancing and screaming back there in my little self. After motivational speakers trusted by global brands to design and deliver business amplifying keynotes that inspire teams to better communicate the value of their company, their products, and their individuality to accelerate personal and professional growth. With that being said, I would love to introduce to you Don Herscher.
Good morning, SEMA. Wow, this is exciting. Congratulations, you get to go after Patti LaBelle. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Surprise! So before I get to the good stuff, I feel like I have to tell you what happened to me the last time I spoke at the MGM. I had to walk through this bachelor party out here in the casino on my way to the engagement. And I was all dolled up. I had this beautiful black gown on, backless, 3-inch heels. My hair was up. I was looking so fine. And as I'm walking up the steps to speak, there's all this like snickering going on behind me and like this stuff, like, oh my God. And I was like, what? Like, did I trail toilet paper up here or something? Because I've done that. So when I was finished speaking, I took my seat in the audience next to my husband, who was looking at me like I just went streaking through a monastery or something. And I was like, okay, what? Can you please tell me what is going on? And he goes, you really want to know? You really want to know? And he takes this Post-it note off my back, which reads, beer rules. Courtesy of Bachelor Boy. Okay, so it's only fitting that I would return to talk about storytelling, right? Okay, let me ask you something. Who's obsessed with their smartphone? Come on, you know you are. You know you are. I'm the first to admit it, okay? I'm addicted to the darn thing. Like, I am. This is how I look most of the time when someone is trying to have a conversation with me. Well, honey, I'm sorry you got fired today, but Felix the cat is doing somersaults in our neighbor's yard. So let me just send a quick cat emoji and, a sun and a couple of things, and let me write a long-winded comment, of course. Okay. Right? My arm could be falling off, and I would still find a way to engage with this thing. I'd be like this. Okay, so why do I bring this up? Well, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but there has never been so much competition for your audience's attention. So how do you get your message through? Between smart technology and social media, how do you make it through all the content, all the chaos, and all the riffraff? It's not enough just to write compelling copy anymore. If you want to make an impact in today's climate, you have to be seen and you have to be heard. And studies are also now showing that people aren't really connecting with facts and figures and data and spreadsheets. That's out. That's last year's model. If they're going to give you their time, their 8 seconds, or their 10 minutes, or their 40 minutes, they want to get something out of it. You know what I mean? They want to have a human experience. They want to walk away and say, now that was added value to my life. That was worth every single moment of my time. Persuasive storytelling is the art of using a compelling narrative to convince your audience of your point of view. Whether you want them to buy your product, or your service, or support your nonprofit, or give you money, or change their mind about something. Crafting a story that they care about is a very powerful tool. Now, what kind of storyteller would I be if I didn't start out with a story? So when I was a senior in college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was thinking like graduate school in psychology or something like that. So one day toward the end of the year, there was this event on campus that I was speaking at, and this man comes up to me afterward. The first thing I noticed about him was that he had on Louis Vuitton shoes and a matching Louis Vuitton belt. I had like Keds on and unicorn socks. Okay, that was my college uniform. Now he comes up to me and he says, "Darling," I mean, who even talks like that? "Darling, you simply must come and work at my hotel. I own this beautiful boutique, 5-star hotel, not too far from here, and I must have you on my team." And I was like, wow, oh my gosh. I never knew anyone who worked in a hotel before. I wondered what job he had in mind for me. He thinks I'm pretty awesome, so he probably wants me to come and run the place. I mean, that makes sense. College graduate, no work experience, unicorn socks. He's got me slated for that general manager spot. So I say, "I'll take your job." And much to my chagrin, I found myself about a month later at my post in a uniform at the front desk. So the training for this job was very rigorous. I was told absolutely no hair flipping and no sarcasm. I was like, wait a second, I'm sorry, what, no hair flipping? No. See, I was kind of a punk back then, and hair flipping and sarcasm were kind of how I survived in the world. But the front office manager was not a huge fan of mine. I don't think she was too thrilled that I was there. She was one of these like glamazon ladies. Her legs were literally up to here on me. So she sat me down one day and she said, "You're about 30 years too immature for this job. The guests of this hotel are mostly celebrities and world-class travelers. And I'm gonna need you to be a little bit more lovely and understated." Okay, so you have to know that at that time, I was the opposite of lovely and understated. Okay, my hair on its own was overstated. I had 80s hair in the 90s, like I just did. But she tried to fix me. So one afternoon, about a month into my job as a front desk receptionist, there was some awards thing going on in town, and I was told that the hotel would be packed with celebrity guests only, and that they would be checking in at the valet and going directly to their rooms. They would not be coming into the front desk, so I would not be interacting with them. And if I were to see one of them, not to say anything. So things were going very smooth that day, and everyone was checked in, there were no problems, and I was learning some new things that afternoon. I was learning how to cash out and roll out and balance ledgers. Well, as soon as I figured out what a ledger was, I was gonna balance it. So all was quiet on the home front. The front office manager decides, I think I can pop upstairs to the cafeteria for a quick bite and leave her alone at the desk. What can go wrong? So a couple minutes after she walks out, a very famous A-list celebrity walks into the lobby and heads right for me. And I'm like, oh my God, what's he doing here? He's not supposed to be here. I can't talk to him. And I'm trying to look as if I'm not thinking any of that. And he comes up to me and he says, "Miss, there's been a mistake. See, I've been given the wrong room. Whenever I stay at this hotel, I always stay in room 302. I must have room 302. If I don't get room 302, things are gonna get ugly." And I was like, wow, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, of course. I can see no reason why you can't have room 302. So I hand him the key, and by the way, I'm terrified. I'm thinking that whatever consequences may come of me giving him the key to this room are gonna be much better than what he's about to do to me at this very moment. So I give him the key, he kind of groans and walks off. And I go back to ledgers and whatnot. A couple minutes later, he's back in the lobby. Only he's not really walking toward me. He's more like lunging for me. He slams the key down on the desk and he says, "Hey, Missy, did you fall down and hit your little head or something?" And I was like, no, not that I can recall. Why? And he said, well, my room is occupied. I walked in and there was a naked woman in my bed. And I was like, you have to remember, I'm kind of a punk, okay? And I know that somebody kind of high up wants me there. And I say to him, "I'm really sorry, sir, that you had to see a naked lady. Think you might live?" Meanwhile, while this is going on, this naked woman is now out of her room and in the lobby. She has a robe on, it's not that kind of story. And she is standing about 20 feet behind him, and she's giving me like eye contact, and she's doing this. Thank you! Yes! Best vacation ever! Yes! And I worked in the hotel business for the next 10 years. Okay, let me ask you a question. Raise your hand if you were listening to my story. Who was listening to my story? Keep them up for a second, keep them up. Before you put them down, take a quick look around the room. Check this out, every hand is raised. This is what your audience should look like when you're speaking to them. Every hand should be raised, whether it's the spoken word or the written word. Everyone needs to be engaged. Because now is the time for me to bring up the thing I really want to talk to you about, my product, or my service, or whatever is on my agenda. Because now I have your undivided attention. Anyone know why that is, by the way? Why do I have your undivided attention right now? Besides the fact that I've shown you some humanness and some vulnerability, and I've charmed the pants off of you with a funny story, there's something else going on here. Any guesses? There's a chemical component to this. Okay, your brains are basically lit up right now. They're on fire. About 10 years ago, a group of researchers discovered that the neurochemical oxytocin has everything to do with this. When oxytocin is present, it's a signal to the brain that it's safe. Because the body produces oxytocin when we're trusted or shown a kindness, and it motivates cooperation with others. Let me say that again. It motivates cooperation with others. It does this by enhancing our sense of empathy, which is really important in business relationships because it allows us to put ourselves in other people's shoes and predict how they may respond to something. This group of researchers thought, wow, this is incredible. I wonder if we can hack into this oxytocin system to motivate cooperative behavior. And they took this a step further. They took a group of people, they showed them a short film. They drew their blood before and after, and they found that character-driven stories with emotional content consistently cause oxytocin to synthesize. And the amount of oxytocin present predicted how empathic and generous the audience would be, like buying a product, or supporting a nonprofit, or giving money associated with the narrative. It's funny, I recently heard a scientist say in a totally different setting that the neurons that fire together wire together, which tells me that once you hook them with your story, then you can reel them in. Then they're yours. And that's when storytelling becomes story selling, because story triggers relationship. I want to dive into this one a little bit deeper. I want to step into the world of event marketing. I want you to imagine that you're putting an event together. Maybe it's for an executive team, maybe it's President's Club, or something like this. And you're going to be calling your contacts and your vendors to start the conversations and the negotiating. Your first appointment on the docket is with the contact at the hotel company you're hoping to book for the event, Mr. Smith. Now, you and Mr. Smith have a lot of history together. You've collaborated on dozens of events. You see each other at SEMA every year. You know each other well. You're past small talk, okay? You have a relationship. And you probably have a contract in place already with this hotel based on that history and based on things like room nights and ADR, etc. But you're going to need to finesse this one a little bit, do some fine tuning if you want the bells and the whistles and the upgrades for this trip. And to do that, you're going to leap into his heart with story. What kind of story, you ask? Just any story? not just any story, a story that is relevant to him, Mr. Smith, but personal to you. Okay? Relevant to him, but personal to you. Just like the hotel story that I opened up with. Why did I choose that story over any story I could have shared with you? Well, because I know that it's relevant to you, and it's obviously very personal to me. But your story must do two things. First, it must capture and hold their attention. Anyone ever see the movie Up? This is a beautiful film made by the geniuses at Disney and Pixar. The movie Up opens up with this montage that basically chronicles this couple's life, starting from when they met as very young children, then growing up together, falling in love, and getting married. And it includes lots of life's ups and downs along the way. It's really very moving. The montage is critical to the film's success for two reasons. One, there's pain in it. The folks at Disney don't mess around with pain, have you noticed? It's true that their films are branded as children's movies, and they're animated, yes, but they still force you to deal with the human condition. They just do. The second reason the montage is so important is because it makes you want to watch the rest of the movie. So if you can combine the human piece and the vulnerability piece and add the attention-getting piece, then you can do what the greatest storytellers of all time are doing every day. And the second thing your story must do is it must transport the audience into the main character's reality, right? When I was telling you about Celebrity walking in on Naked Lady, weren't you right there with me? Weren't you imagining what this scene looked like? You could nod. Perhaps it made you think of something funny that happened with one of your own events, or vendors, or guests, or clients. Hopefully, it transported you to one of your own stories. That was the goal. This transporting thing, actually, that I'm referring to, is an amazing neurological feat. We watch a film that we know is fictional, but the evolutionary old parts of our brain simulate the emotions that the main character is feeling. And we begin to feel those emotions too. And it's this emotional simulation that forms relationship. The kind of relationship that allows humans to engage in large-scale cooperative behavior, like building bridges, or sending humans to the moon, or establishing world treaties. And why? Because story triggers relationship. What you're not going to do is sit down with Mr. Smith and list your products and your services and your accolades and your testimonials and your mission statements. That was the most amazing mission statement I have ever read in my entire life. Said no one ever. Authentic stories that capture attention and make people feel. That's the goal. So let's get back to our meeting with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you so much for meeting me here today. I'm really looking forward to collaborating on another event with you. I wanted to first mention that I recently read your article on LinkedIn about meditation. And I was really moved by it because you don't see a lot of people talking about meditation in a professional community. Several years ago, I found myself in quite a tough little spot, and it was actually a daily meditation that helped pull me out of it. I would love to briefly share that story with you, Mr. Smith. When I was in my early 30s, I met and married the man I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. He had a beautiful home in the hills and a successful career in the film industry, and I thought I was set. Turns out these are not reasons to marry someone. About 6 months into our marriage, we were told that we would not be able to have children. Probably the biggest blow to my life. All I wanted to do at that time was be a mom. In addition, my husband had developed a pretty serious drug problem as a result of having multiple surgeries, and somewhere in there he had a drug overdose and a suicide attempt. So as you can imagine, the period following that was pretty dark for me. I began to check out myself. I didn't see much of family or friends, didn't even go to work every day. I kind of developed this, what's the point of even bothering attitude? And I started to, as they say, circle that drain. And then one day around then, a friend of mine came to see me. And she said the words that changed my life. She said to me, "Have you considered trying a breathing technique to deal with all of that?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, a breathing technique? How is that gonna work? I've been breathing this whole time. Like, how's that gonna help me?" And she said, No. Hear me out for a minute. Hear me out. I want you to sit quietly for 3 to 5 minutes a day. I want you to shut out all the noise and concentrate on your breath. This will reduce stress and heart rate, and that's a start. So I kind of thought, well, I'm sort of out of ideas. Nothing I've tried has worked. What the heck? I'll try breathing. So every day I sat quietly for 3 to 5 minutes, shut out all the noise, and concentrated on my breath. And not much really changed on the outside. My reality pretty much stayed exactly the same. I didn't have one of these burning bush moments or anything. But something changed internally during that time, energetically, subconsciously. I began to connect with the world in a way that I really never had before. And then one day, about a year or so into that, it was quite a long time, I woke up one morning and I heard this little voice inside my head that said, "You're gonna die here." And I ran out of that house like my hair was on fire, and I never looked back. A year later, I met the real love of my life and had 3 babies. So your article reminded me of the most transformative thing that's ever happened to me. So thank you for posting it. Do you see why that story is so impactful? You have the human piece, you have the vulnerability piece, and you have the attention-getting piece. Also, did you notice that she told a story as opposed to a narrative? See, there's a difference between talking about the story and telling the story. And I guarantee you, if you tell the story, people will never forget you because you will allow them to live through you visually and vicariously, and you will transport them into your reality. So what do you think happens when you sit down with a client like Mr. Smith and you tell him a story like the one she just told him? What's the thing that fast tracks? The thing that accelerates? The thing that you probably can't get to as fast without the story? Trust, right. Is trust important in business relationships? My 7-year-old says, "Well, duh, mommy, Obviously, yes, trust is important in business relationships. If you want to grow your business, that is. About 6 months into my job as a front desk receptionist, I walked into the restroom one day that was kind of adjacent to the 5-star restaurant we had on the property. And right when I walked in, there she was in front of the mirror putting on her makeup. It was the object of my affection my whole life. My all-time favorite actress. There she was. I will never forget what she was wearing. She had this beautiful silk blouse on with baby blue stripes, baby blue strappy shoes, jeans, and a blue belt. She was just stunning. And she saw me in the reflection, and she turned around and she said hi, and I was like, what, me? And I think I opened up my mouth, but I literally do not remember any words coming out. In fact, I don't even remember using the restroom that day, but I must have, because when I walked out, the bottom of my dress was tucked into my underwear. Lovely and understated. So of course she chases me out, and she tells me kind of discreetly about my situation back here. And then she told me that she did the exact same thing before going out on a date with Hunky Joe from some TV show. And we literally fell to the ground laughing hysterically, like belly-aching laughter, as we swapped horror stories of embarrassing moments and things we did on dates We laughed so hard, I cried my mascara off. She said that I reminded her of her childhood BFF. Well, not the cool one, though, the awkward one, of course. But here's the thing. From that moment on, I was the only person in the hotel that she ever dealt with again. She brought all of her friends and colleagues to stay at the hotel. And when I left and went to another hotel company, and a pretty big step up in my career, she followed me there and brought all of her friends and colleagues there too. So my career in the hospitality industry was basically born out of one relationship, formed in trust as a result of storytelling. Because story triggers relationship. So we've been talking about the findings on the neurobiology of storytelling and how it's relevant in deepening our relationships. But it's also relevant in growing our businesses. That same group of researchers that I was telling you about went on to prove that character-driven stories with emotional content result in a better understanding of the key points a speaker wishes to make and enable better recall of those points weeks and months later. I mean, if these findings are true, and I have no reason to doubt that they are, why would you not use storytelling to grow your business? It's like not eating if you're hungry. It makes no sense. The scientists have basically cracked the code for you. They've told you how to break into your customers' noggins. And I guarantee you there is no shortage of story in this room. Okay, so I speak in front of all types of groups, all right? And sometimes they're a little bit more techie. Maybe they make an OEM that goes into a phone or a computer. And no offense to them, we love them, we need them. But sometimes finding the storytelling for them takes more hand-holding. The path may not be as clear. But you are SEMA. The very purpose of your professional lives depends upon the human experience. And I guarantee there is no shortage of storytelling in this room. You have said it yourselves, that your differentiator is your non-selling, is your peer-to-peer environment. To you, relationships are first and foremost. And what triggers relationship? Storytelling. So let's add storytelling to your differentiator. So this has been fun, right? This is a fun conversation. Got our story on, talking oxytocin and naked ladies and meditation and Louis Vuitton. Have you learned some stuff? I think I've learned a few things too. But how is this going to help you? How is the information that you learned here today actually going to help you grow your business? That's what I want to spend our last few moments talking about. So I have come up with 3 takeaways that you can start doing today to grow your business through storytelling, okay? And I want to start with the most obvious, which is social media. Now, this is a savvy audience. I know who you are. So I'm going to assume that all of you, or most of you, are engaging your clients through some type of social media, right? So here's what I want you to do. Once a day, I want you to take a social media status update, and I want you to turn it into a mini blog post using these 3 concepts. 1, use relatable characters. Is lovely and understated girl relatable? Yeah, she is, because there's a little bit of her in all of us. So likewise, build in regular personalities into your narratives that your audience can find engaging, like company pets or office personnel. These are all very interesting personalities that your audience can really sink their teeth into. Second, always take people on a journey. Always tell the story. The most basic building block of storytelling is pacing. First this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Always tell the story. And the third concept is conflict. You cannot have a good story without conflict. Everybody loves drama. There's a naked woman in my bed. The most compelling stories have conflict and resolution. Second takeaway, share your brand's story Okay, people don't buy into brands. They buy into the story behind the brand. About a year ago, I went to my neighborhood coffee place to get my daily cappuccino fix. And on that day, I went through the drive-thru, and when I got to the cashier, she told me that my drink was already paid for by the car in front of me. And I was like, oh, okay, well, why? And she said, well, she was just trying to be nice. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm nice. I'll pay for the drink for the car behind me. She said, okay, thanks. Sure, $20, please. I'm like, okay, no problem, I'm being nice. So the next day, I went in to get my coffee, and I was telling the folks that worked there what happened the day before because I was so tickled by the whole thing. And she said to me, oh, you were in that lineup yesterday. And I was like, what lineup? And she said, well, it started off with one person paying for the coffee drink for the car behind them. And then every car did this for 30 minutes straight. And I was like, oh my God, this is an incredible story. And as a storyteller, I'm thinking, I've got to call the company and tell them this story. Like, they're really going to want to know this. And they did. They turned this into a little campaign. They used it as a marketing tool. They wrote an article about it and published it in their newsletter. Do you think that their audience enjoyed reading an article that wasn't just about a million different ways that you can make coffee and a million different ways that you can drink coffee, but rather how people out in the world are relating to their brand or how they're being of service to each other through their brand? Yeah, they did. Share your brand's story. And the third takeaway, this is my favorite. I want you to go back and I want you to tell a story. I want you to go to your offices and I want you to call a meeting with whomever is relevant in sharing your brand story, which, by the way, is everyone. And I want you to tell a story using all the key ingredients that you learned here today. The story can be about anything, but it has to do two things. It has to be relevant to them and personal to you, right? Relevant to them and personal to you. The story can be about something that happened at SEMA. Maybe it happened at the bar last night. You know, not everything that happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas. Maybe you slapped a Post-it note on someone. I hear that this is a bit of a reunion for you all. Well, do you know how you can determine whether or not a reunion has been successful? By the stories that people tell when it's over. Okay. So why is it so incredibly important that you do these three things? Turn a social media status update into a mini blog post, share your brand story, and go back to your companies and tell a story using all the key ingredients that you learned here today. Why is it so incredibly important that you do these three things? Well, here's how I'm going to answer that question. I recently heard this marketing guru, big shot, say, and I'll quote, "Incorporate storytelling into your brand or become irrelevant." Irrelevant, wow. It's not like you said it's going to suck to be you if you don't, or see you wouldn't want to be you, or don't let the door hit you on the way out, but irrelevant. I don't know about you, but that went through me like an ice pick and gave me great pause. And then once I thought about it, I realized that this is actually really good news for you all. Because your industry is moving in the area of connectivity, of storytelling, of relationship, and moving away from cookie-cutter marketing practices. So this is really great news for you, because everyone in this room has stories to tell. Every single one of you has amazing stories to tell, and we want to hear them. So y'all gonna go out and tell some stories or what? And in the words of my profound Post-it note buddy, stories rule! Thank you.